Jeremy Wade is a legend in natural history television. For 9 seasons on River Monsters, he traveled to the world's most remote waters, tracking down fish that most people thought were myths or exaggerations. He caught giant stingrays in Thailand, Goliath tigerfish in the Congo, Arapaima in the Amazon. He was bitten, stung, nearly drowned, contracted tropical diseases, and survived a heart attack while filming. Through it all, he remained the calm, educated, respectful voice explaining these creatures to millions of viewers worldwide. River Monsters wasn't just entertainment, it was genuine natural history education disguised as adventure television. Jeremy Wade became one of the most respected figures in wildlife programming, trusted by scientists and audiences alike. His dedication was absolute. His knowledge was unmatched. His passion was undeniable. But since River Monsters ended in 2017, something has fundamentally changed. At 68 years old, Jeremy Wade faces challenges that no adventure or expedition ever prepared him for. He's been battling a mysterious illness that doctors struggled for years to diagnose. He disappeared from public view for extended periods, leaving fans wondering what happened to the man who seemed indestructible. Financial struggles emerged that nobody knew about. The reality that fame doesn't always equal wealth. He's facing the harsh truth of aging with physical abilities declining rapidly after decades of abuse his body endured. And perhaps most tragically, he's confronting the loneliness of a life spent chasing fish instead of building relationships and family. His new shows after River Monsters failed to capture the magic, each one a reminder that you can't recapture lightning in a bottle. Jeremy Wade spent decades hunting the world's deadliest fish, surviving dangers that would have killed most people. Now he's facing an enemy he can't catch, can't fight, and can't escape. The consequences of every choice he made. This is the tragic reality of what happened after River Monsters. The price of dedication, the cost of obsession, and what remains when the adventure ends. River Monsters premiered in 2009 and became an instant phenomenon unlike anything Animal Planet had aired before. Jeremy Wade was 53 years old when the show started, already an experienced angler with decades of expeditions behind him. He wasn't a manufactured television personality. He was a genuine expert with a biology degree from Bristol University and real knowledge of freshwater ecosystems worldwide. He'd spent 20 years before the show traveling to remote locations, building relationships with indigenous communities, learning traditional fishing methods. The show's success was unprecedented. Over 250 million viewers worldwide watched across 9 seasons. Jeremy visited nearly every continent, documented species never before filmed, and inspired an entire generation of anglers and marine biologists. What made Jeremy special was his willingness to go anywhere and endure anything. He never complained. He showed genuine curiosity about every species, but that lifestyle was brutal. He traveled 10 months out of every year for nearly a decade, living in remote locations, facing physical dangers regularly, contracting tropical diseases, suffering injuries. That lifestyle was taking a toll cameras never showed. The injuries and illnesses accumulated over decades. Jeremy contracted malaria multiple times. He suffered from dengue fever. Other tropical diseases left lasting damage. Parasitic infections required aggressive treatment. Wounds from fish became seriously infected. Back injuries from fighting massive fish. Shoulder damage from endless casting. Joint problems from hours in boats. Then came 2014 when everything nearly ended. Jeremy was filming in the Amazon when he started experiencing chest pain. He was having a heart attack in one of the most isolated locations on Earth. Emergency evacuation was arranged. Doctors diagnosed significant heart damage requiring surgery. Production was forced to take a break. Doctors warned him about continuing the extreme lifestyle, recommended retirement or scaling back. But Jeremy returned to filming against medical advice within months. Why? Financial obligations, responsibility to crew members, not knowing how to live any other way. His entire identity was wrapped up in being Jeremy Wade. The exposure effects were also catching up. Years of tropical sun causing skin damage, multiple skin cancer scares, hearing loss, vision problems, chronic pain, compromised immune system, and the unavoidable reality of aging he couldn't outrun. The official story about River Monsters ending is that Jeremy decided to conclude the show on his own terms after 9 successful seasons. But the reality was more complicated. Animal Planet was pushing for changes Jeremy opposed. They wanted a younger demographic. Production costs were extremely high. Jeremy's health concerns made insurance difficult and expensive. There was pressure to amp up drama and manufactured tension. Jeremy refused to compromise scientific integrity. So while ratings were still strong, the decision was made to end production. The end meant Jeremy at 61 had to figure out who he was without the show. He had no family waiting at home, no permanent residence, few close relationships after years of constant travel. Jeremy tried to continue with new shows. Mighty Rivers premiered in 2018, lasting 2 seasons before cancellation. Dark Waters ran from 2019 to 2021 for 3 seasons with diminishing returns. Mysteries of the Deep launched in 2020, but its studio-based work, an accommodation to Jeremy's declining health. None captured the River Monsters' magic. Jeremy was visibly different, older and less energetic. Fans could sense something had changed. Lightning in a bottle cannot be recreated. His physical limitations were obvious. The spontaneity and danger were missing. The financial reality of Jeremy Wade's situation is not what fans would assume. Most viewers believed he must have made a fortune. The reality is significantly different. Reality television pays far less than scripted television. Jeremy had to split earnings with the production company. He didn't own the show or footage. Residuals from streaming deals went to the production company and network. The lifestyle costs were substantial. Storage for fishing equipment, travel expenses, medical costs from tropical diseases, astronomical insurance premiums, supporting local guides, donations to conservation organizations. No permanent home meant constantly paying for rentals without building equity. Jeremy Wade is not wealthy despite being famous. 20 years of self-funded expeditions before River Monsters depleted his savings. He never prioritized money over adventure. He received bad financial advice or didn't plan adequately for retirement. British television pays significantly less than American productions. The new shows paid even less with smaller budgets. His negotiating power had diminished. He supplements income through modest book royalties, declining speaking fees, and sporadic consulting work. His current financial situation is precarious. He's living on depleting savings. He can't maintain his former lifestyle. He worries constantly about affording healthcare needs. Around 2019 and 2020, Jeremy began experiencing alarming symptoms: chronic fatigue far beyond normal tiredness, unexplained weight loss, persistent fevers, severe night sweats, cognitive issues including memory problems, balance and coordination difficulties. He saw multiple doctors and specialists. Tests for obvious tropical diseases came back negative. Cancer screenings were inconclusive but concerning. Autoimmune disorders were considered. Neurological examinations were conducted, but no clear diagnosis emerged. The frustration of having debilitating symptoms without understanding what was wrong was psychologically devastating. Why was diagnosis so difficult? Decades of exposure to tropical diseases created incredibly complex medical history. Dormant infections reactivating years later. Parasites from countless locations that standard tests don't screen for. Cumulative damage from multiple malaria infections. Severely compromised immune system. His medical history was too complex to untangle. The toll on his work was immediately visible. Filming became increasingly difficult. He canceled scheduled expeditions. Producers noticed his struggles. Fans commented on his appearance. Noticing weight loss and lack of energy, he took extended absences from public view, disappeared from social media for months, canceled speaking engagements, turned down filming opportunities he physically couldn't do. Jeremy Wade is 68 years old and has never been married. He has no children. He's had few long-term romantic relationships. He's admitted he chose fishing and adventure over family and domestic life. That choice seemed right at the time. But now, facing old age and declining health, the consequences are painfully clear. Why did Jeremy never settle down? His career required constant travel for decades, expeditions lasting months in remote locations, no way to maintain relationships when you're unreachable for half the year. He met women but couldn't give them what they needed: presence, stability, commitment. He had fear of commitment to anything except fishing. He repeatedly chose adventure over family, believing he could settle down later, but later never came. His current living situation reflects the emptiness. A small flat in England barely lived in, minimally furnished, surrounded by fishing equipment and research books, photos of fish caught rather than family gatherings, minimal visitors, no regular social life, days without conversation. The isolation of aging without a support system is crushing. No spouse to share memories with, no children to visit or provide care, few close friends because everyone moved on. Colleagues are busy with their own projects. He feels invisible after being so famous. After River Monsters ended, Jeremy tried desperately to recapture the magic. Mighty Rivers focused on conservation and environmental threats. It was more serious, less adventure-focused. Jeremy seemed tired on camera. The show lasted only 2 seasons. Viewers wanted monster fish, not ecology lessons. Dark Waters attempted to return to the River Monsters format by investigating fish-related mysteries. 3 seasons, but with diminishing returns. Budget cuts were visible. Jeremy's age was more apparent. Mysteries of the Deep launched in 2020 and continues, but it's a fundamental shift. Focus on marine mysteries rather than fishing. Much more studio-based, with Jeremy narrating footage shot by others, an accommodation to his declining health. The show lacks the adventure that defined River Monsters. Why did none of these work? Lightning in a bottle cannot be recreated. Jeremy's physical limitations are obvious now. The spontaneity and real danger are missing. Networks demand different approaches. Audience expectations are impossible to meet. The television landscape has changed. Jeremy feels frustrated knowing he still has expertise to offer, but his body betrays his ambitions. Watching younger hosts get opportunities he built the template for, becoming yesterday's star in an industry that moves fast. Feeling his legacy fade as River Monsters becomes fondly remembered but not actively engaged with. The health situation Jeremy faces continues declining. His physical abilities diminish steadily. The mysterious illness persists. There's constant fear of a more serious diagnosis still to come. The accumulated damage from decades of tropical exposure is catching up all at once. Mobility issues limit his independence. Cognitive concerns about potential future decline terrify him. Financial anxieties consume his thoughts. His savings are depleting. Medical expenses are mounting. He has no guaranteed income stream, no pension, no retirement account. Book sales and speaking fees aren't enough. He worries constantly about affording care if his health deteriorates further. The aging reality is harsh. He's 68 with the health of someone significantly older. He has no family to provide care or support, no spouse to help him, no children to rely on. He's facing old age completely alone. His body that survived so much is now failing him in ordinary ways. Loss of independence is his greatest fear. The possibility of a care home looms, but he can't afford quality facilities. Professional obsolescence adds to his distress. The television industry is moving past him. Younger hosts are taking opportunities. Networks don't return his calls. He feels forgotten despite his contributions. His legacy is questioned as shows fade from memory. His relevance is disappearing, and with it his sense of purpose. Existential questions haunt him constantly. Was dedicating everything to fishing worth sacrificing family? Did the fish matter more than human connection? He can't undo choices made decades ago. He wonders about alternate life paths. He faces mortality without having fully lived in some crucial ways. His regrets about relationships never built, children never had, connections never made are overwhelming. What terrifies Jeremy Wade most isn't the dangerous fish he caught or life-threatening situations he survived. It's dying alone with nobody to care, being forgotten by an industry he helped build, physical decline robbing him of independence, running out of money before running out of life, and having no one to share his memories with. The river monsters he hunted never frightened him like this. You can face down a bull shark with preparation and skills, but you can't fight aging, can't catch loneliness, can't escape consequences of choices that seemed right at the time, but left you isolated and vulnerable at the end. This is the enemy Jeremy Wade cannot defeat, the one that will ultimately claim him, and he faces it completely alone, without support, without resources, without hope. What does Jeremy Wade do now at 68? He takes narration work when available. He works on writing projects. He goes on limited fishing trips near home when health permits. He maintains social media presence. He does occasional consulting work. He lives quietly out of the spotlight, a shadow of the adventurer millions remember. But his environmental legacy is substantial. River Monsters raised awareness of threatened freshwater species. The show inspired conservation efforts worldwide. He documented fish before some went extinct. He educated millions about freshwater ecosystems. He changed how people view so-called monster fish, generating empathy instead of fear. His impact on conservation is real and lasting, extending far beyond entertainment value. The fans who still care provide some comfort. River Monsters remains popular on streaming platforms. New generations discover the show and appreciate what made it special. His social media following is still substantial, with people engaging with content he posts. There's appreciation for the educational quality of his work. respect for how he treated the fish and environments with dignity. His legacy is meaningful contribution to natural history education that influenced careers and conservation policy. Small pleasures remain that bring moments of peace. Occasional fishing trips on rivers near home, reading and research about fish species, writing about experiences and processing decades of adventures through reflection, hearing from fans about how the show inspired them to study marine biology or pursue conservation careers, knowing he made a real difference in how people think about freshwater ecosystems and the creatures within them. Moments of peace sitting by water, the environment where he's always felt most himself and connected to something larger than his own isolation. Jeremy has been asked about regrets in interviews over the years. His answers are carefully measured but revealing. He says he would make the same career choices again, that the adventures and discoveries were worth the sacrifices he made. But he wishes he'd balanced his life better, found ways to maintain relationships alongside the expeditions and filming commitments. He regrets having no family to share his later years with, no children or grandchildren to provide meaning beyond professional achievement. He wouldn't trade the adventures and experiences that defined him and contributed to conservation in real ways, but he accepts now the consequences of his choices. The loneliness and isolation that resulted from always prioritizing the next catch over human connection and commitment. He's made peace with the path he took, understanding that every choice has costs and benefits, but the costs are becoming increasingly difficult to bear alone. The tragic irony of Jeremy Wade's life is profound and heartbreaking to contemplate. He spent his entire adult life catching monsters, proving they existed, educating the world about creatures most people feared or dismissed as myths and legends. But he couldn't catch happiness or romantic love, couldn't figure out how to build lasting relationships or let people close enough to matter. He conquered every river system on Earth, fishing waters no one else dared to approach, going places that terrified experienced anglers and surviving what should have killed him. But he couldn't navigate human relationships, couldn't figure out how to balance career with connection, couldn't let someone in instead of always moving on to the next expedition. He survived countless dangers that would have killed most people, illnesses and injuries and situations where death seemed certain and escape impossible. But he can't survive aging alone, can't escape the vulnerability that comes with growing old without support systems, without people who care, without anyone to help when help becomes necessary. His current philosophy reflects hard-won wisdom gained through decades of living one particular way. He takes life one day at a time, not looking too far ahead because the future is frightening and uncertain. He's grateful for what he experienced, the adventures and discoveries that few people get to have. He accepts what can't be changed, the past decisions that brought him inevitably to this point. He finds meaning where he can, in small moments and connections, in knowing his work mattered and influenced real conservation efforts and educated millions. He tries to help others learn from his mistakes, warning about the costs of single-minded dedication and the importance of balance he never achieved. And he faces the future with dignity, refusing to complain publicly or seek pity despite legitimate struggles that would overwhelm many people. Jeremy Wade spent decades proving that river monsters were real, that the fish people dismissed as legends actually existed in remote waters around the world. He caught species that scientists said were impossible to catch. He survived dangers that should have killed him multiple times over 40 years of extreme expeditions. He educated millions and inspired generations of naturalists, conservationists, and marine biologists who credit him with their career choices. His contributions to natural history television and freshwater conservation are real and lasting, and will outlive him. But now at 68 years old, sick and alone and financially insecure, he faces the most difficult catch of all, finding peace with choices that gave him everything he wanted professionally and nothing he needed personally to sustain a human life beyond the professional years. The tragic reality is that you can conquer every river in the world and still drown in loneliness that consumes you. You can catch every monster fish documented by science and still be caught by regret that haunts your remaining years. You can be the absolute best in the world at something, the undisputed expert and legend in your field, and still wonder late at night alone if any of it was worth the price you paid in isolation and missed human connection. Jeremy Wade's life didn't take a tragic turn recently or suddenly. It's been tragic all along, unfolding slowly over decades of choices that seemed right in each moment. We just didn't see it as viewers because we were too busy watching him catch fish, too entertained by the adventure to notice what it was costing him personally in ways cameras never captured. The monster that finally caught Jeremy Wade wasn't in any river or lake or ocean. It was time itself, age and consequence, the inevitable bill coming due for a lifetime of choices that prioritized fish over people and adventure over attachment. He's facing that monster now without the tools that served him so well against physical dangers, alone at 68 with declining health and depleting resources, with no one to help him fight what's coming. That's the real tragedy of Jeremy Wade that no episode of River Monsters ever showed audiences who loved watching his adventures. The lonely end of a legendary career that inspired millions but left the man himself with nothing that actually sustains a human being in old age. The fish are gone, returned to the rivers he'll never visit again. The rivers are distant, inaccessible to someone whose body can no longer endure the travel and physical demands. The cameras have stopped rolling, moved on to younger hosts and different formats that don't require what Jeremy can no longer provide. And Jeremy Wade faces what remains of his life completely alone, confronting the consequences of every choice he made over 50 years of pursuing fish instead of people, adventure instead of attachment, professional achievement instead of personal connection. This isn't meant to diminish his accomplishments or suggest his life was wasted or meaningless. He did important work that mattered. He made real contributions to conservation and education. He inspired generations and influenced real policy changes that protect threatened species. That has value, real and lasting value that will outlive him. But it's incomplete as a life fully lived. It's not enough to sustain a human being beyond the professional years when age and illness make work impossible. And Jeremy is learning that now in the hardest possible way, by living it every single day, by facing each morning alone, by confronting the reality that all his achievements and all his fame can't fill the void left by absent relationships and family and human connection that he sacrificed for his career. The tragic turn of Jeremy Wade's life is ultimately a mirror for anyone watching who has prioritized career over connection throughout their lives.